What's up guys, Phoenix here. This video is going to be another DEVpro duel video in ranked, and this time it is going to be some Blue Eyes TCG legal deck versus Kozmo matches. Now I'm doing a little bit different of a video style. I'm going to try a different format of video out, where I literally just went into ranked for a few hours today on DEVpro and just filmed every single game that I got against Kozmos, and I'm putting them up in one video with post-duel commentary because I didn't want to try and commentate over them while I was playing them when I did not know whether or not I'd actually play against Kozmos or not, essentially. But anyway, this deck is a TCG Legal Blue Eyes deck. This is my current build. This is what I've just been playing around with, and this is what I play in the video. And now, the biggest issue is that we do not have Alternative Dragon. We have no idea when we're getting Blue Eyes Alternative White Dragon imported to us, although it is highly likely that we'll be getting it in the movie pack that we get in late July, because there are a few unconfirmed card slots that are extra from the OCG movie pack that we do not know what cards they could be. And it would just make sense from a business perspective to give us Alternative White Dragon then, because we'll have the Felgrand deck then, which comes out just a couple weeks before that, and then we have all these Blue Eyes cards from Shining Victory. So if Konami wants to actually sell product, then they'll put Alternative White Dragon in the movie pack. But I digress. This is the current TCG build that I'm playing with, that is literally just all the Shining Victories support cards and everything we have accessible to us at the current point in time. Now the deck, unfortunately, with the without Alternative White Dragon being in the mix, we unfortunately have to fall back on a lot of like really heavily gimmicky stuff in the form of what I'm going with in this video: Maiden with Eyes of Blue and Light Mausoleums. Now this card interaction is really gimmicky. It is very effective and it is very economic with card quality, but and card economy. But still, it's nowhere near what the just overall scope of the deck can perform at with Alternative Dragon, because Alternative Dragon allows you to open up into all these good quality one card like search effects in the form of like Melody of Awakening Dragon and all that sort of stuff. The deck is definitely just kind of patched together and trying to operate in its current form without Alternative Dragon being added into the mix. Now even Arcbrave Dragon would be an amazing addition to have to the deck right now, but unfortunately we don't have any of that sort of stuff currently. We literally just have to play with what we have, and what we got is what you see. Like, this is arguably as good as it could possibly get. If you guys have any suggestions for the build or have a build of your own, definitely send them to my Facebook fan page. Link is in the description, and maybe I'll check them out. But as for this video, this is what I'm playing with, and like, there's just niche little choices of like a Corseska, because you can actually search cards off Ravine, search a level 1 tuner that could be used with to make a Where Art Thou Live, which came up in a few test games and stuff like that. Fabled Cat Sith, even though there's only a few discard outlets, like, you still have access to quite a few discard outlets, and if anything, you can summon it and Where Art Thou it. Like, with Light Mausoleum up, your normal summon isn't as stressful as it used to be, and basically you literally just try to go into Spirit Dragon and Azure Eyes and establish advantage as soon as you possibly can. But anyway, that's basically enough discussion that I'm going to be putting forth in this video. I might do a deck profile once I get this more fine-tuned and tweaked to be better, potentially, and then give some more in-depth discussion about the deck and card choices then. But anyway, that's all for this little part of the video, and let's just hop into the first match. Okay, so first game, first out of 4, all of which against Kozmos, because that's arguably going to be the most relevant and prevalent matchup for this deck to try and overcome in the coming weeks as the Shining Victory format just kind of develops itself. But anyway, first opponent, he goes first, and he summons Tin Can and tries to enter his in phase without any set cards. So I Veiled the Tin Can, and he chains its ability to special summon Forerunner out of his hand, in which I chain Max C2, which allows me to draw a Terraforming. So my hand isn't great. It's still not really great until I draw that Sage. The Sage that I drew right there was incredibly crucial. I was just like, I'm not going to be able to play this game, but then I just drew arguably the best card that I could have drawn, period. So a Terraforming for Light Mausoleum, and then I get to normal summon Sage, or I guess it's Mausoleum of White, or Mausoleum of Light. I can't remember its TCG name, but the Light Mausoleum. So I get to use my additional normal summon on Sage, and I contemplate my choices between getting Maiden, Guard, or Master, and just kind of figure out what I want to actually try and go for. And I just end up choosing Maiden, because Maiden with the field spell will be an easy access into a Spirit Dragon, and then I'll be able to leave the Maiden up for potential value later as well. So I use the field spell's effect, I send a Blue Eyes from my deck to grave, and I special Blue Eyes out of my deck off of Maiden, thus basically getting every single vanilla out of my deck, because I have the Blue Eyes in my hand already that I could potentially use later and do that all sorts of stuff. But I contemplate for a little bit if I want to attack his Forerunner with my Blue Eyes and let him float down and then make Spirit Dragon, or if I just want to make Spirit Dragon and just pass with his Forerunner up, let him gain the 1,000 and try to deal with his Forerunner on the next turn, because I don't know what the rest of his hand is, and the fact that he's gone into a Forerunner and he's set nothing makes me believe that his hand is arguably pretty weak. So I kind of make the decision that it's okay for me to leave that Forerunner up and for him to gain that 1,000, because I'll basically just be able to out the Forerunner next turn and make another Spirit Dragon and negate its floating effect. But he ends up summoning a Sword Trooper. He has nothing engraved to activate its effect to revive, so he just immediately banishes it and summons a Dark Destroyer out of his hand. And with Dark Destroyer, he targets my Spirit Dragon, and so I use its effect, tributing itself and special summoning Azure out of my extra deck, thus dodging the Dark Destroyer and then triggering Azure's effect to give me some blanket protection for the Azure until the end of my next turn. So it can't be destroyed by battle, can't be destroyed by card effects. And so he enters his battle phase with Destroyer and Forerunner, and he attacks my Maiden with his Forerunner. And so I trigger its effect, negate its attack, turn Maiden to defense mode, and special summon the Blue Eyes from my graveyard. And I summoned it in attack mode because I didn't really think about it at the time, but I should have actually just summoned it in defense mode, because summoning it in attack mode let him suicide his Dark Destroyer into it and let him float into more advantageous pilots for him to use and try to mold his plays further. If I'd summoned the Blue Eyes in defense mode, then he would have just run over it in battle, and then the Azure Eyes would have brought it back at the beginning of my next turn anyway, so it would have guaranteed being there. Me putting it in attack mode was arguably a misplay, because it allowed him to go into Strawman, as you currently see on the board, and then Strawman revive the Dark Destroyer, and then during the end phase, Dark Destroyer dies, and he gets to go for Tin Can and start establishing the searches that he needs to start maybe, you know, molding his hand into something really good. But, so he goes into his Tin Can, pays 500 in his end phase, and he reveals Dark Lady, Dark Destroyer, and Dark Eclipser for me to choose randomly amongst. And I'm just sitting here with no real way to prevent him from doing any of this stuff. I'm just kind of waiting for my next turn to happen. And I randomly pick one, and I check the grave to see what went to grave, and it's the Dark Eclipser and the Dark Destroyer. And I was honestly wanting to give him Dark Destroyer simply because, or Dark Eclipser rather, because it's literally dead. But I ended up giving him the Dark Lady. So he banishes the Strawman, and he special summons Slip Rider out of his hand and pops my back row. So he pops one of the Twin Twisters that I had set, and then he immediately banishes his Tin Can and summons Dark Lady. Now the Azure Eyes gets to trigger in the standby phase, but it gets negated by Dark Lady. But Azure Eyes has still got its blanket protection from being destroyed by card effects, so it does not get destroyed by Dark Lady. It just soaks up the Dark Lady effect negation. Now from here, I'm like, cool, I can make Blue Eye Spirit Dragon, I can attack over his Dark Lady, I can attack over his Slip Rider, and then I can make the double Azure next turn be, you know, not able to be attacked over by his Forerunner, and then I'll be in such a amazing position for this game. But unfortunately, when I activate my field spell and discard the Blue Eyes out of my hand targeting Maiden, I accidentally right-click, and so I miss my Maiden activation window because I literally say, no, I don't want to activate anything else. So I'm forced to go Where Art Thou into Sage and discard Sage, targeting Maiden, triggering its effect there, getting White Spirit Dragon, and getting Blue Eyes out of my deck. So now I'm just like, well, damn. This sucks, because this misplay could easily just be something that cripples this game from being winnable for me. Like, I could easily just not win this game anymore, because the original play was to just discard that Blue Eyes, make Maiden, special summon another Blue Eyes from grave, and then I have a Spirit Dragon, I turn Azure to attack mode, I attack over Dark Lady, I attack over Slip Rider, I negate the Slip Rider with Spirit Dragon because it can negate the grave activation, and then I pass turn to him again. He leaves the Forerunner up, he gains another 1,000, but he only has one card in his hand, and then I can just tag that Spirit Dragon into a second Azure, which will trigger and protect it from the Forerunner. And then both Azures will trigger in my next standby phase, giving me 2 Blue Eyes, which let me make a rank 8 to out the Forerunner. Seems like a legitimate thought process, right? But unfortunately, I just did it wrong. So I ended up having to salvage my playline with the Sage, and so I ended up using Sage, going into my White Spirit Dragon and my Blue Eyes, making Galaxy Eyes, Photon Dragon, making full armor Photon Dragon, and using that to destroy his Dark Lady, and then going into Dark Matter Dragon, sending all the dragons left in my deck into the grave. Even though Ancient Stone can't trigger, I want to make my deck smaller so I can draw more cards like Silver's Cry, Soul Charge, stuff like that. And then I detach from Dark Matter to allow it to attack twice. I attack his Forerunner, which he floats down into a Slip Rider, and then I attack with Dark Matter over his Slip Rider in attack mode, and he floats down into Tin Can. Now, the issue here that I actually wish I'd saved a replay and looked is that he, in his end phase, activates Tin Can, and he just specials Wicked Witch out of his hand and then scoops. Now, the question I have is whether or not he had 3 Kozmo monsters with different names left in his deck, enough left to use off Tin Can, or if he just misclicked or not. I literally want to know if it was just a misclick that caused him to just summon that out of his hand, and in which case basically we're even, or in terms of like misplaying, or if it was something that I actually did by making him banish monsters out of his deck with Dark Matter. But anyway, going into the next game, my hand is actually like really weak. He summons Farm Girl and sets 3. My hand is really weak until I draw the Terraforming for the field spell. The field spell plays a huge role in this deck because of the fact that Alternative Dragon does not exist, because it gives you easy access into Spirit Dragon, which gives you access into Azure with protection, which then also allows you to just mold your board. The fact that Alternative Dragon doesn't exist, like, just takes away a lot of the aggressiveness of the deck's plays, and you basically have to fall back on that with Maiden and the field spell, because those address the issues that the deck currently has in the form of getting monsters out. The problem is that Maiden itself is a very fragile card and can easily be made to miss timing, because its effect is when this card is targeted you can. It is when optional, so if your opponent responds to the effect of what's targeting Maiden, then you do not get to trigger Maiden, and that becomes incredibly relevant in a few of the games that I've played and a few of the games that I've filmed. But anyway, so I summon the Maiden, play the field spell, send a Blue Eyes from deck to grave, and then summon one out of deck off of Maiden, and then go into Blue Eyes Spirit Dragon. And at this point, my hand is set up because I still have a normal summon left because of the double normal summon that the field spell offers me. I can use that on Master, and then I also have Silver's Cry to bring back Blue Eyes, so I can easily make another level 9 Synchro this turn. So he goes and he Cosmojos on a Farm Girl, and I'm like, alright, so your hand is absolutely garbage. You must have bricked. There's no other explanation. You're either not good with the deck or you bricked, and I'm more inclined to believe the former, because even if you're not good with Cosmos, you know you're supposed to use Cosmojo on your ships, because they float, it gives you value. So, he Cosmojo destroys his Farm Girl and then banishes my Spirit Dragon. He does this in the main phase, so I'm able to just immediately normal summon Guard, and then I chain Silver's Cry to Guard's effect to add back Maiden, because all the plays that I've made so far have been playing around like Torrential and Bottomless, in the form of Maiden summons the Blue Eyes out of my deck off of Chain Link 2, and then and Spirit Dragon can dodge Bottomless itself inherently. So I just kept with the theme of dodging potential cards like Bottomless and stuff like that with Silver's Cry as Chain Link 2, because then Blue Eyes hits the board at Chain Link 2, and Bottomless cannot respond to it because Guard is still trying to resolve adding Maiden back. So I attack for 33 with the Master and the Blue Eyes, and then I make Spirit Dragon in main phase 2. In phase, he flips Call the Haunted. I chain my Max C, because at this point I know his hand is incredibly weak. I just want to get the free draw out of it. And so he has his Farm Girl back, and then he normal summons a Sword Trooper. And so at this point, I'm just like, alright, so do you have the ship at this point? Do you have the ship that you could use? If this person had opened a way to Tin Can, then I probably would not have had any way to win this game, because he had Call of the Haunted. He would have had Call of the Haunted, Tin Can, and then he would have had like a Sword Trooper to follow it up. If he had had Tin Can access instead of that Farm Girl, it would have been absolutely game for him. I would have had no way to plow through a Mojo, a Dart Destroyer, and a Sword Trooper following it up. I would have had no way to do that. But anyway, so he summons his Sword Trooper and overlays into Breaksword, and then uses Breaksword's effect targeting itself and targeting my Spirit Dragon. I chain Spirit Dragon, summon Azure out of that, give it protection. So then he flips another Call of the Haunted, so he had multiple Call of the Haunted, so further enforcing the fact that if he had Tin Can, I just would legitimately lost. And he overlays into a Dante, mills some cards, and then he scoops. So just a brick hand from him just ended up being what allows me to take the game from there. Now, this game, my opponent goes first again and just starts with 2 sets and a Cosmo Town, and basically my hand is not as good as it could potentially be. It could get a lot better, but I do have Maiden plus Where Art Thou, and I do have Soul Charge to keep throwing stuff in. But he goes to his end phase, the proper play, activates E-Tele, summons Tin Can out of his deck, and then activates Tin Can's effect to pay 500 to reveal Dart Destroyer, Forerunner, and I believe a Slip Rider, if I remember correctly, as what he reveals. The issue is that, I don't know, Dark Lady, Slip Rider, and Dart Destroyer. My mistake, my apologies, but I end up randomly picking the Dart Destroyer for him, and then he tags out his Tin Can into Dart Destroyer, and now at this point, he activates Dart Destroyer's effect, targeting itself, which just gives a huge, huge forecast that he has at least one Call of the Haunted set, because he's basically just trying to load up his graveyard with literally one of any name that he could possibly get, because he floats into another tin can, pays 500 again, reveals more Kozmo cards, this time Forerunner, Sliprider, Dark Destroyer, and then those go to grave. And I check his graveyard to see what I ended up giving him, and the Forerunner and Dark Destroyer are there, so I ended up giving him Sliprider. But I draw a Twin Twister, and I'm like, alright, so I can go ahead and activate this. If he has one Call of the Haunted, I think I'm okay with that. So I discard the White Stone of Legend, and activate Twin Twister, and target his 2 back row. Turns out both of his back row were Call of the Haunteds, not just one of them. My read was correct, but it was actually just worse than I ever thought it could be. I was expecting it to be a Call of the Haunted and a Cosmojo. I wasn't expecting it to be 2 Call of the Haunteds, although it does make sense for it to be double called, because he was literally just trying to flood his grave with every option he could possibly have. But he chains both Call of the Haunteds, brings back 2 of his Cosmos, and then they die off of Call of the Haunted, and then they start floating down. So he floats down into a Cosmo Landwalker, and then floats down into a Dark Lady as well. And so now my hand is completely utter garbage. The only thing that I can do to potentially win this game is hope that he doesn't negate the Sage with Dark Lady, and hope that he negates the Maiden. Because if he negates the Sage, like I've already addressed in this video, Maiden is a win optional effect, so if your opponent resolves to an effect, responds to whatever targets Maiden, Maiden misses her activation window. And so unfortunately I try to activate Sage and just see if he'll let it go and like negate the Maiden, but he negates the Sage with the Dark Lady, so Maiden cannot trigger, and now my hand has Silver's Cry and a Blue Eyes and a Soul Charge in it. I can't activate any of them because there's no Vanillas in grave. Soul Charge would literally just get back 2 tuners, it would do nothing, and from there I'm just basically completely out of the game, especially since he also has a tin can that he gets to activate on his end phase. And I'd contemplate whether or not I want to sit here and wait for him to actually do something. He reveals Farm Girl, Straw Man, and Sword Trooper, and of course my random pick gives him the best one in the form of the Sword Trooper. Very, very RNG. I'm not very good at it, so I decide I don't want to actually sit through this anymore for the sake of the video, and I try to hit surrender and it just keeps like glitching out, so I ultimately just exit out and try to go on to the next game, which ironically enough I'm playing against the exact same guy. And now my hand is also in this game not that great, so at this point I'm just trying to protect myself so I can see more cards. I summon Sage, search Veiler, pass my turn. My hand is literally a bunch of cards I cannot use, and I've got to try to live to see another turn to potentially draw something like maybe Dragon Ravine, or maybe like a Trade-In, something like that. If I could draw something that gets me into more cards, or that starts at least causing my engine to start moving, then we'll be good. We'll be like legit. It'd be alright. But anyway, he normal summons Farm Girl after setting 2 and playing Cosmo Town, and he goes to enter battle phase, and before he enters battle phase I Veiler his Farm Girl because I'm not in the position to where I want to get blown out by that Farm Girl at this point, because Sage has literally got 0 attack, so I'm just like, this is so bad for me. So bad. And so it only gets worse, as they naturally do. I draw a Blue Eyes for a turn, and I'm like, neat, great, awesome, Blue Eyes. So I set Cat Sith because I'm like, I can't let this Farm Girl touch me. The only way that I like live this game to see another turn is if he doesn't have another card that he can summon in his hand. So I'm like, he had 3 back rows, so maybe, who knows? He had the Farm Girl, so I mean, maybe he just doesn't have anything else. He didn't start with a tin can. So he Allure of Darknesses, draws 2, banishes a Sword Trooper, so I'm just like, there's the other card. And then he adds the Sword Trooper back off of Cosmo Town, and then Twin Twister discards a Sword Trooper, pops his Cosmo Town, and then triggers Cosmo Town's ability to search for a Cosmo, and he searches for Dark Destroyer. And so at this point it's revealed to me that he had multiple Sword Troopers, and he normal summons another Sword Trooper that he had in his hand. And I'm just like, this game is basically over on this turn. I'm just going to let him play it out, and maybe he'll mess up. Maybe he'll mess up, and maybe I'll get another turn to potentially draw something that can correct my hand. So he uses Sword Trooper to bring back the Sword Trooper that's in grave, banishes the fresh Sword Trooper, which is an arguably questionable play, to summon Dark Destroyer. He could have banished the one that he had already used its effect on, but honestly it's negligible at this point because he Dark Destroyer pops my set Cat Sith, attacks me with Sword Trooper, attacks me with Farm Girl, uses its effect to search another Dark Destroyer, and then Dark Destroyer attacks me directly, and then he tags into another Dark Destroyer, and Dark Destroyer pops the Dark Destroyer that already attacked, which floats down into a Dark Lady. So basically, if I was trying to be a savage and like hold the Battle Fader or hold the Minko until the absolute latest possible time, even that gets negated. So like, it's very, very much GG for me at this point. There's absolutely no way that I can win any of this game or the last one. So honestly, I'm not quite sure how I feel about the Blue Eyes deck, at least against Kozmos, without the use of Alternative Dragon. Even if we had like Archbrave Dragon and the Felgrand support, the deck would be a lot more better situated than it is now, because of the fact that the deck has to rely on very fragile gimmicks like Maiden plus the field spell in order to give you at least sort of the same play line that you could have with Alternative Dragon. But Alternative Dragon is just so much better for the deck because you have access into strong one-card accessibility into plays like Melody of Awakening Dragon. The fact that Alternative Dragon can pop a monster and then be synchroed away with, like, all these different things are just better card quality and better advantage yield. So I'm not sure how the deck will actually fare until we get a potential Alternative Dragon. But anyway, that's been all for this video. Let me know if you like this sort of format of how I'm just like going away from live commentary but not just filming replays, because the replays kind of go way too fast for you to commentate over, at least in my own personal experience. So just filming them when I'm playing and then speeding them up a little bit and then commentating over them seems like a nice way to go from there. And just to make sure that like all these videos are clustered together of like me playing against a certain deck, because I want to keep it that way. But anyway, as always guys, thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe to all the nonsense you usually do. If you want to suggest a deck for me to play or maybe do a deck doctor on, send it to my Facebook fan page. Link for that is in the description. If you want to support me, clicking ads on my videos and disabling ad block when you view my videos is more than sufficient. I can't express how much it helps me out or how much it would be appreciated by myself if that is something you could do to take a few seconds out of your day to help me out and help motivate me to keep making videos, basically, because the more I make from these, the more I want to keep making videos, essentially. I mean, that's just how the world works. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and as always, guys, take care.